Hey folks, Poster, welcome back to another Pokemon Masters video, and you guys asked for me to do this, so I guess I'll do it again. As you guys probably know, not the biggest tier list fan, but apparently a lot of you guys find it useful, so let's do this then. So, a few things I have to say beforehand, so people don't get confused and mischaracterize the list or whatever, right? First of all, this is completely co-op. This is co-op. This is not single player. There's no point doing single player, honestly, because Battle Villa, you need a certain set of Pokemon to beat it, and regular single player stages, you don't need a tier list at all. Everything just wrecks everything in regular single player. So this is a co-op strictly tier list, and it's based on that, and it's also based on a few more things. It's based on randos, so we're not going, planned team comps, right? So it's just reliance on randos, and we are going to count into, all the supports that could potentially be in that randos bring, maybe. So it's randos plus NPCs. We're not going for team comps, right? So just solely on these units, right? So also another thing that we are considering is that we are also considering synchrons, right? Synchrons is now a thing, and we're considering synchrons. We're gonna consider them all maxed out and to their maximum potential, right? So that means everyone's basically, I guess, that can be 3 out of 5 gets 3 out of 5. If they're the free-to-play sync pairs who are 2 out of 5, then they're at 2 out of 5. The sync pairs that can be 3 out of 5 are going to be at 3 out of 5. So with that being said, thanks to Spark, my boy Spark, for helping out on this tier list, and also as usual, it's my tiers. Well, it's mine and I guess Sparks, right? Tier list. Not everyone will agree. I don't think a single person will agree 100%. This is like my tier list, and I don't even agree with it 100%. Well, it's not completely mine. Had help with Spark, but Spark doesn't agree with this 100%. I don't agree with this 100%, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys do not agree with this 100%, which is fine because this is subjective. Keep that in mind. Also, one more thing. This video will be long. I do not want to see any complaints about the video being long. This is a tier list video. There's 40-something units that I have to go through one by one. Okay? I have to justify why I'm putting them there. I'm not just putting them there and then voila. It's over, right? So, don't complain about how long it is. I'm trying to justify why I'm putting things there. So, finally, let's get into this. So, number 1, as you can see up here, there's a tier by himself. It's called Red, and it's even colored red. So, this is quite simple. Red's up there. So, we're gonna go in the order from top to bottom. I guess Red's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's just insanely strong. It has all the buffs it needs. It has crit. It has +6 to both special attack and physical attack. It has a sync grid, which is insane, and has really great passives like rejuvenate from the sync grid that it could get. It gets 6 bars after you sync move. It has a mega, which does a lot of damage. It has a 4-bar blast burn. It has both 3-bar physical and special attacks. It has an AoE special attack. His attacks never miss. Gets move gauge back potentially when he uses any move. It could sometimes lower your sync move countdown, and has insane stats. Also +6 speed. I even forgot to mention that. Red is I don't know what to say. It's it's if you cannot see this, I don't know what else to tell you. So, Red's, unfortunately for everyone else, fortunately for Red, in a tier of his own, so that's where Red is. So, moving on to S+, again, we're not going to go through, go in order in terms of you know, it's like, oh, the first one I'm gonna mention is number 1 in S1. No, they're all in S+ tier. I'm not gonna order them. So let's get into S+ tier. S+ tier, I'm gonna go ahead and let's throw some stuff in there. Sceptile. Sceptile is very, very strong. Also, one more thing I do want to mention. We are going to use, we're going to talk about lucky skills as well, because Sceptile benefits a lot from lucky skills. Although, even without lucky skills, Sceptile's still going to be an S+, just because Leaf Storm, tons of damage. You get 100% crit. You get a really, really good stat buffing move. You have really good stats as well. Good speed, all that stuff. You got physical and special options. Sceptile is just insane. It just does so much damage. And now with the lucky skills, now that lucky skills are a thing, if you get Sceptile Dauntless, so it doesn't lower its own special attack with Leaf Storm, it's unstoppable, right? So, moving on to the next one. Let's throw in Steven here. So Steven is unbelievable. It has Synchro as well. There's so many different builds with the Synchro you could work with. It is a Mega, so it takes time to get into its Mega stage, but once it is Mega, it hits as hard as anyone else on this list, right? It's incredible. And unlike a lot of the other Megas, Steven pre-Mega is actually really decent, right? It has a solid single target move, and again, do keep in mind we're talking about co-op, so you know the AoE moves are not as good in co-op. So it has a really solid single target move. Accuracy isn't an issue. It has some potential tech stuff with that as well. And after it gets sync-critted, you have Bullet Punch that raises your crit to, 2-3, right? So you get 100% crit after you sync, and you also have two chances of 100% crit before you sync as well. And then you also have endurance with that. And then you also have the highest physical attack in the game. Metagross is just really, 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 really good. So, next one, also an S+, if I could find, there we go. Olivia, again, these are not in order. They could be whatever, right? These are not in order, these are just in this category. Olivia in Lycanroc is very, very good. It used to be, a lot of people used to call Olivia the best unit in the game, which, even though there's some argument around that, but it's not like too far off. Unfortunately, now Red took that spot for now, and Olivia is, it's still like the same tier. Olivia was in this tier before. Olivia's just really, really good. You got speed up every time you crit. You have 100% crit. You only need 1 hardest diamonds to get 100% accuracy and 100% crit on Stone Edge. So really fast setup. One of Olivia's strongest strengths is that it sets up extremely quick. Like for example, Sceptile, you need 2 dire hits, and then the other move thing, or dire hit plus. What was it called? No turning back, I think it's called. And then everyone else, it takes a while to set up. Olivia, you could just go 1 hardest diamonds and start spamming Stone Edge, right? Or if you want, there's also X special attack where you could throw in as well when you're out of move gauge. And again, every time you crit, you raise your speed. Does massive damage. Rock type's a good type. Although we're not really putting typing into consideration, right? So Olivia, still insane, still really, really good. So last one we're throwing into this category is Mewtwo. This is a free-to-play unit which you can max out 20 out of 20. Extremely strong. Got both Shadow Ball and Psychic. Very, very high damage. Single target moves. You have crit buffs. You have good speed. You have insane speed and insane special attack. Mewtwo is just wow. I mean, it isn't like glassy either. Once you have it 20 out of 20, and it's a free 20 out of 20. Like, again, this is probably why Mewtwo is probably why Solgaleo and Rayquaza isn't as strong. Like in comparison, they made Solgaleo and Rayquaza much weaker, just because they threw out Mewtwo. They threw Mewtwo out there, and then Sol was like way too strong, so they had to like tone down the power of these free-to-play legendary Pokemon. But well, they let one slip, and we all now have Mewtwo. Or I mean, we're close to all having, because Mewtwo's. Some people didn't get Mewtwo, but Mewtwo's coming back in like 2 days or something, right? So or actually it's coming tomorrow night. So there's that. Anyways, that's for S plus tier. Let's go to, I don't know why I did S plus and like no S tier or S minus, but anyways, let's ignore that small detail. Let's move on to A plus. So these are still extremely strong units, but they're not like these guys who are like generally usable in like 90% of scenarios. This guy, you could use him like at anywhere and he should be fine. So yeah, let's go to A plus. So A plus, let's throw in Torkoal. So Torkoal, I used to have in with the same tier as these guys, but unfortunately, there are some shortcomings with Torkoal. As strong as Torkoal's damage is, and Torkoal's damage is really, really good. Torkoal's really, really tanky. The only issue is that Torkoal, you can spam, but Torkoal is kind of stage dependent. Because in stages where spamming is effective, then Torkoal is obviously very, very good. In stages where you really don't need spamming, like every time it comes back to you, like your gauge is full or whatever, other units just work better. But Torkoal is an absolute monster, but unfortunately it's just not as good as the other. It's like Torkoal's really, really close though. If I'd promote one from A plus up to S plus, I initially had Torkoal in S plus, but yeah, I guess Spark did convince me on this one. So moving on, the next one we're gonna throw in here is Chris. Chris just does so much damage. Chris's shortcomings are pretty obvious as well, but that does help with some of the supports that are in the game or coming into the game that would make Chris not that would work out Chris's shortcomings much better. Stuff like Eevee, Rotom, potentially Sabrina as well, right? And even before that, before those supports, Chris is still really, really good. Chris just does so much damage. It's unbelievable. Usually it's only like 2 mega kicks and you're done. But those 2 mega kicks, fully boosted mega kicks, wow, they do a lot of damage. So moving on to the next one, let's throw in Mew. So this is a bit of a surprise. Hey, a 3-star base free-to-play tech unit is A plus. Wow, right? Mainly due to its Synchrid. Same thing with Flannery, right? Synchrid. Super versatile. You could do so many things with its Synchrid. The Sync Nuke is insane. Sync Nuke is insane. You could do Blizzard, you could do Thunder, maybe Fire Blast if you really want. The Psychic build's not bad either. You could use it as a debuffer. It's extremely tanky. Mew is just an incredible unit. So there's Mew. Moving on, let's put Houndoom in here. Houndoom with its upcoming Synchrid is a monster. Snarl Spam, Dark Pulse boost. Wow. Watch out for Houndoom. Once Houndoom comes out, Houndoom used to be like absolutely atrocious in damage, right? It just doesn't do any damage. It doesn't, it's you could barely even call it a striker. It's basically like a tech unit, honestly. But with the Synchrid boost, it just got so much better. It has really good self-sustaining buffs, and then it also helps lower your whole opponent's field's special attack. And when you are lowering their special attack, you're also boosting your own Dark Pulse damage once you do get that. And then you'll have also other builds where you could do like Bite, Poison, Foul Play, or whatever, Play Dirty, wherever it's called, that move. And also you could build it so that Bite makes you sync or mega faster, right? So Houndoom's is an absolute beast after the Synchrid, so that's why Houndoom's up there. Quite the leap for me, honestly. Moving on, throwing in Roserade, and a lot of people are what, really Roserade? It's a 4-star. Is it really up there? And I'd argue yes. Roserade does like I think 20 or so less damage than Sceptile on average, which is really good. Sceptile is amazing, and Roserade just barely does slightly below Sceptile's damage per second, right? So that's really good. The reason why Roserade isn't as good as Sceptile is Roserade does have some shortcomings. First of all, Sceptile's damage, like they have different periods of peaking of damage. Roserade takes a while to get like the absolute best out of Roserade. Although Roserade, here's the thing, Roserade does good at the beginning of the battle, and near the end of the battle and late in the battle, and Sceptile does really good at the early / mid part of the battle. And also Roserade speed is just not as good as Sceptile. Sceptile's speed is just insane. So that's also a slight issue for Roserade as well, but Roserade, really, really good unit. So moving on. Last one in this tier, I put Garchomp. So here's the thing with Garchomp. Like, yes, it is AoE unit. Yes, it does need sand to really make it, you know, optimized. But once you do, that's a lot of damage this thing is outputting, right? Especially after Mega, like with the insane boost in its stats, Garchomp just does so much. Unfortunately, for some reason, they decided to make ground type units still affected by chip damage from Sandstorm, which still doesn't make sense to me. But if not for that, you know, Garchomp would be really insane. Like, just Garchomp, just great, you know, decent stats overall, good buffs, right? You get 100% crit with that, and also with Sandstorm, right? And the X attack and all that stuff, and Earthquake, despite being again an AoE move, it's just so good in this scenario. So moving on to A tier. A tier, let's throw some stuff on the board here. So for A tier, these are still really good units, although they do kind of lack in power when going against, you know, against stages that they're not really super effective against or whatever. But when they are against stages that they are effective against, they kind of dominate, right? So let's work this. Let's first put Lance on the board. Lance can be an absolute monster when you're playing in team play, when you do have the right supports, when you have stuff like Delibird, Dusclops, whatever, Torchic boosting its stats. Like, Lance could potentially be all the way up here if you're playing with maybe not there, maybe here. But without it, it does struggle sometimes, right? Now or never is kind of yikes. It's a yikes move. It's very high risk, high reward. The lack of any self-sufficient buffs also kind of hurts it a bit. Hyper Beam, 4-move gauge move without any speed buffs, and Dragonite not being too speedy itself. After you use your 2 Now or Nevers, you're kind of screwed. Potion's great, but also, again, you have to use it at the right time. You have to have really good timing with Now or Never and Potion, or you could screw up. But once you do get it rolling, Hyper Beam does so much damage. So much damage. Also, you have to make sure that Hyper Beam doesn't miss. 10% chance of missing. Not the worst, but yeah, pretty bad. Moving on. I'm not saying Lance is bad, but you know, but the chance of missing it kind of sucks. Unfortunately, hopefully the Synchrid for Lance could make up for that. But anyways, moving on. Let's bring out another champion. Blue. Blue's really good. Blue has really good buffs. Blue, once you do Mega it, its stats skyrocket, and Hurricane just does insane amounts of damage. Blue's also relatively quick, so it has that going for it as well. The only thing about Blue is before you Mega, the damage you output, I mean, Blue isn't bad, but it's not like the greatest either. So there's that. Smilator has Evasion, which is pretty nice, so there's that as well. It's just Blue just kind of lacks before you Mega. Once you do Mega Blue, Blue is insane. Like, it's almost Karen levels, right? But Karen kind of pulled in front of Blue now since Karen got the Synchrid, unfortunately. In terms of, you know, post Mega, like pre Mega, Karen was never a contest between Karen and Blue. Like, Blue was just much better than Karen pre Mega, before the grid. But now with the grid, Karen just got so much better. All right, moving on. Let's throw in, ooh, I don't see him in here. Oh, it's down there. Oh, rip. Let's put Infernape here. Also gridded. Infernape's really good. You have 2 different options to go with it generally, right? You have either Fire Punch or Fire Blast, which both are really solid options. I know a lot of people like going with Fire Punch just because generally, yeah, you don't, other than Hilda, there really aren't any decent physical Fire Strikers, other than, I guess, Charizard. But it's hard to make Charizard a physical Fire Striker. It's just way too much stuff to go right for it there. But otherwise, Infernape's really good with endurance and all that stuff. So it's not like that easy to kill, I guess. For the most part, it just does a lot of damage. It's a good, solid fire type striker with the right, buffs as well. With the sync crit, you could get 100% crit potentially sometimes with that as well. So that obviously helps. Although Infernape is probably one of the weaker, so I could potentially drop Infernape into A-, but I think Infernape merits being up here. Moving on, speaking of fire type physicals, let's go Hilda. Hilda is extremely bulky. Hilda has very, very glaring downsides, right? The recoil obviously is not great for Hilda. It takes a lot of recoil damage, but Hilda does make up for it for having, 1, lots of HP, 2, potions. Hilda does take a while to set up, but on the bright side, Hilda also has self-sustaining speed buffs as well, so you don't really have to rely on anyone to buff your speed. So that also helps as well, and you kind of have to use speed buffs because that's like the only way to get your attack up as well. But once you do get that up, again, recoil is an issue, but take the recoil side, Hilda does a lot of damage. Hilda does a lot of damage with that. So that's Hilda. Moving on to Hilda's buddy, I guess. Partner in crime, recoiler in crime, Zebstrika. Zebstrika, what Zebstrika has over Hilda is Zebstrika does have crit, so that helps Zebstrika a lot. But again, same issues with Hilda, recoil, but also really tanky. Alyssa's kind of like a electric type version of Hilda, basically, except one has crit and one has attack buffs. So there's that, and also you do have regens with HP regeneration methods with Zebstrika as well, so it's not that bad. So moving on, last one on this list is one of my personal favorites, Nolan. Nolan's great. Again, it does suffer the same fate with Torkoal, in which that it's only really useful in stages where spamming is more tolerable. You can actually spam, right? In stages where you can't spam, it's just not as good. But when you are in stages that you could spam, you just out damage. You could potentially out damage all of the A+, maybe even S+ units, right? There is a glaring weakness with Pinsir, which is it's Fury Cutter. It's not 100% accuracy. That really kind of blows for Pinsir. So whenever Pinsir gets a Synchrid, fixes the accuracy issue, it's gonna be like much better. And also, you do kind of have to calm down the spamming once you do get your Mega, because you could like Fury Cut through the Mega. You don't have to Mega, but generally you would want to Mega. And once you Mega, well, that just cuts your Fury Cutter. That's why a lot of people like using X Scissor before you Mega, which is that's valid, right? So you could do that, and then after you Mega, you go for Fury Cutter, which then it's just like unstoppable damage. So that's Pinsir. Moving on to A-. The A- tier is generally really effective sync pairs against stages where they're super effective against, but would also kind of struggle outside of that. So let's throw how about Lucario. Let's put Lucario in A-. Lucario, again, glaring weaknesses. I like how I'm like making a tier list and going from like top to bottom, and I just talk about people's weaknesses first. But I mean, like, in these tiers, everyone's upsides are pretty obvious. They're mainly just hit hard and either A, fast, B, tanky, or bulky. So I guess it's mainly we're comparing like whose weakness is like more tolerable or something. But yeah, Lucario obviously does a lot of damage. Close combat, really good. One of the rare megas that pre-mega, you honestly, Lucario's mega probably matters the least. Like, its mega really doesn't even do much in comparison to its its regular form just outputs so much damage already. So like mega is not that necessary. So yeah, it's one of the best. It's one of the best mega Pokemon that don't need to mega to perform really good. So stuff like Red, Lucario, Pinsir, right? Those are prime examples of that. Metagross. So there's that. Downside, obviously, close combat. It's like the biggest glass cannon in the world. It decreases both your defenses every time you use it, and well, it's not fun when you decrease your defenses, because once your opponent touches you, you will die. that's just Lucario. You just output as much damage as possible before the opponent touches you at all. So moving on, let's put Zinnia Rayquaza in here. Zinnia Rayquaza, another free-to-play unit that you could get to 20 out of 20, 5 out of 5, which is pretty cool. Zinnia Rayquaza does decent damage generally most of the time. Zinnia Rayquaza, like, everyone knows what the problem is with Zinnia Rayquaza, right? It's a linear function that's negatively sloped. Is that I'm not good at I'm not good at calculus. I'm pretty sure that's how you describe it, right? It starts up really high and then just kind of falls down. So that's kind of unfortunate for Zinnia Rayquaza. Also, the defensive stuff is kind of as well. But at its peak, it does a lot of damage at its peak. So it has that going for it. So there's that for Zinnia Rayquaza. Moving on to the other legendary event Pokemon, if I can find it. Here we go. Solgaleo. Solgaleo is really, really good. So like Solgaleo, if you are playing in team play and you have folks to support it, like you give it move gauge or whatever, give it crit, like Solgaleo is all the way up here, right? Solgaleo is like extremely good if you have good supports. But again, this tier list is based on co-op randos, NPCs, so we're assuming, you know, people will come in at random. We don't have any reliable team comms, and that's kind of where Solgaleo suffers. Solgaleo just eats up move gauge, right? It has a really, really good stat buffing move, but it costs 3 gauges. And unlike Sceptile, which you only need to use it once, generally, you have to use it twice. So that's 6 gauges down, and like, what can you do? That's 6 gauge, and all your other moves are, well, not all your other moves, like your 2 main moves are 3 gauge moves. And especially if you're going against something that's fighting weak, you have to just take that out. Like you can't even just say, oh screw it, I'm just not going to use the stat boosting move and then just start blasting. You can't really do that, unfortunately, because Focus Blast is not 100% accuracy. You need the accuracy. Yeah, otherwise Solgaleo really tanky once you get it to 20 out of 20, really tanky, and does a lot of damage once you do set it up, right? So that's Solgaleo. Moving on to the next one, I'd say Kingdra. I would put it in here again. Also gridded. Gridded Kingdra gets rid of a lot of its weaknesses, a lot of its issues with Draco Meteor and all that stuff. So there's that, and also there's certain builds if you want to do like a rain build or something with Kingdra, that's also viable as well. Yeah, that's Kingdra, I guess. Like, it really doesn't have, like, the biggest issue with Kingdra is, like, its stats aren't, like, the best, but aside from that, with the grid, its kit is actually really, really decent. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, I'd urge y'all to try out, you know, a gridded Kingdra. It's actually pretty cool. Next one we're gonna put on here is gridded Price. The Synchron really doesn't help Price that much. Price just has really good, like, passives, and also, like, it's kind of like the only ice type shark in the game. And it's a really good one. It's AoE, unfortunately, but it has good buffs. The buffs also help it defensively, right? So it's not as glassy. Again, really good buffs. Also got a Sync Grid. The Sync Grid, like, even with just the raw power boosts on Icy Wind, it's still really good. And Icy Wind does lower your opponent's speed every time you use it 100%. Which is very, very helpful. So it's, you know, tech striker kind of thing going on with Price. Moving on, Pikachu. There's a few ways you could build it, right? But we're talking about strikers in this case, so we're gonna talk about Pikachu as a striker for the most part. And as a striker, it does decently well. You could either go Thundershock or Thunderbolt. You throw you do like hostile environment, paralysis synergy, and all that stuff. And again, low bar move. It's quite spammable, so very similar again, Noland and Iroquois, except just not as good, unfortunately. So you got that. You could also, maybe if you want, do Power Reserve or whatever. So Pikachu has a lot of options. It does have Endurance, right? Then mine also Potion, that helps. You can help your teammates with that as well. It's just, I guess the downside is it's self buffs aren't the greatest. It doesn't have crit or whatever, so that's kind of unfortunate. That's why Pikachu's down here. Pikachu could be even lower, I guess, but I don't think it's that bad. Moving on. B tier. Let's put our boy in here first. Crasher Wake. Crasher Wake has probably one of the best self-sufficient buffs in the game. You get like +6 attack, and also get 100% crit. Like, what more can you ask for in Crasher Wake? The biggest issue with Crasher Wake is, and it pains me to admit, Crasher Wake's downsides. I'm joking, but kind of joking. But yeah, Crasher Wake's downsides are pretty obvious. Its stats just aren't there. It's a tech unit, right? It's not supposed to have insane offensive stats, but it does make up for it with its self boost, which is why Crasher Wake is up here. And also the tech part of Crasher Wake does help as well. You know, you do get flinches pretty often, and if you want, you could also get confusion maybe. So that's Crasher Wake. Moving on, Fentina's not bad. You have an AoE ghost move, so there's that. Shadow Ball is just, Fentina just gets completely outclassed by Mewtwo. She has move gauge recovery, that's cool as well. Her self buffs are meh. I mean, but overall, like she's not terrible. She's not terrible. She just gets like completely outclassed, unfortunately here. Moving on, Erica, Gridded Erica. Gridded Erica is definitely not as good as Gridded Torkoal, but Gridded Erica is still very, very interesting because you do have a lot of options that you could work with Energy Ball. You know, you could have like this Energy Ball Snarl kind of build. You could Energy Ball Confusion, Energy Ball not Energy Ball, Stun Spore Confusion, and all that stuff. Stun Spore Snarl thing going with it. And you also have a Paralysis Synergy, Confusion Synergy kind of thing as well. So you could bring what used to be potato damage tech unit to a place where it could do really just output massive amounts of damage on a 2-gauge energy ball. So that's pretty decent. Moving on. Let's put Roxy here. Roxy being, I think the only poison striker in the game. It's pretty good. It has decent buffs. Has, you know, both offensive and defensive buffs. Poison Jab's pretty good. So there's that as well. Its stats could be better, honestly, but just good buffs, good offensive move. So there's that. Moving on, next striker. Well, not striker, it's a tech unit, but basically a striker. Koga, poison. I think people now know how strong poison is in this game. Poison is very, very strong. Poison plus Venoshock, really low gauge. I wouldn't say high damage output, decent damage output. A lot of Koga's damage output relies on poison. But the sync move after your opponent gets poisoned does a lot of damage. The self buffs are not bad either. You know, you get the vision, all that stuff. So yeah, there's Koga. Generally does not do as much damage as Roxy, I'd have to say. But again, the poison does make up for it, and I don't think Koga is as, you know, in comparison, I don't think Koga's like a tier lower or whatever. So we're gonna put Koga there. Moving on, Machamp can do so much damage. Problem: accuracy. So that's a bit of a problem with Machamp, but otherwise Machamp does really decent damage. Machamp gets overshadowed by Lucario, unfortunately, but well, Machamp does survive longer than Lucario generally, but Lucario also has 100% accuracy, so there's that. Moving on, I'm gonna go like slightly quicker over the lower tiers. Like, it's mainly like the upper ones that need more explanation. Well, let's put Will in there. Will is okay. It has decent bulk. It's just really stage dependent, right? Because it really depends on what stage you're using, and kind of also depends on your allies as well. So if you get like Will, in the best case scenario, is an absolute monster, but it's really hard to find the best case scenario. That's the problem with Will. So there's Will. Moving on, Han Raichu. I personally would probably put Hao in C, but Hao, I mean, Hao's not bad. Like, the self buffs are whatever. I won't say it's whatever, but you know, it's not ideal. And discharge is an AoE move, but it's just not bad. It's just not bad. Like if you look how, you know, if you see what how it is on paper, at a glance, you see, oh, like, oh, whatever, right? But when you actually use it and do some slight math on it, How's damage is actually not terrible. So there's that. Moving on to C tier. C tier units they have just massive downsides, and like from C tier on, it's just kind of like a lot of these units, I guess, like A- to S+, all of them do really, really good damage in some way, one way or another. B tier is and then C tier is just damage is kind of suspect now. So our first unfortunate Sing pair on this list is Gold. I said Gold. Ethan, not Gold. Ethan, not Gold. Yeah. It's I like Ethan and I like Typhlosion, but it's just not that great, unfortunately. At max HP, Eruption's an absolute monster move. Problem: once you get hit, it's over. You only get 80% of that damage. Ethan doesn't have crits either. Ethan, you can recover yourself, so you can get a few max damage eruptions out there. It's just hard, and you know, without any other like defensive capabilities, like Ethan just struggles. Like Eruption, first of all, is an AoE move, which is much better. Like Ethan in single player would be much higher, right? But in co-op, Ethan just doesn't perform that well. Like even Ethan's strengths are just kind of whatever in co-op, right? Next one, another 5-star, Reuniclus. Other than the fact that it gets completely outclassed by both Mew and Mewtwo, Reuniclus just does not do a lot of damage, unfortunately. Like its stats, when you look at stats, like it's like not that bad, but then again, you remember it doesn't have crits. You do some slight calculation, damage isn't even there, honestly. So that's unfortunate with Reuniclus. What Reuniclus does have is, never mind. I was just about to say that it's bulky, but then I just saw Mew over there, and Mew's like the bulkiest unit in the game once you promote to 5-star. Okay, never mind. It doesn't have bulk, so it's just unfortunate. Let's just leave it at that. Moving on, Haxorus. Again, with Synchrits, we're talking about 2 out of 3, right? Haxorus could be much better when the full Syncrit is unlocked, but at the moment, it's just whatever, right? Haxorus could have been much better, but I mean, Haxorus used to be like unusable. The Syncrit made Haxorus usable, in the sense that, you know, you could do some Dragon Claw builds, which is pretty nice. So yeah, there's Haxorus. It's just unfortunate. Like the Syncrit's not fully unlocked yet at the moment, and with the stuff that it's unlocked right now, and even when it is unlocked, I don't see it going like much higher. But I mean, Dragon Claw spam is not a terrible option, I guess. Moving on, Nolan. Of all the units, I say I don't consider their typing, except for one, Nolan. Nolan, I actually do have to consider its typing because it's normal type and it's super effective against absolutely no one. Bright side, Double Edge. Huge amounts of damage. This guy does so much damage. Downside, Recoil. That's basically the story with all these Recoil units. Tons of damage. These guys do tons of damage. Right? Same with Lance. A lot of damage. Just Recoil, unfortunately. And Slacking also just doesn't have, you know, it doesn't have any type of advantage at all, which also hurts it. Moving on, Sylveon. Sylveon does not do damage. That's the biggest issue with Sylveon. You can see a pattern. All these guys down here, except for with the, you know, lone exception of Slacking, they just don't do much damage. Sylveon's not an exception to that either, unfortunately. Much as I like Valerie and Sylveon, what can we do? Like, it's two gauge moves. Upsides. Sylveon does have a lot of upsides, though, in comparison to, unfortunately, a lot of the other folks in C tier. Sylveon probably does like the least damage of all of these, but Sylveon is pretty bulky, and you do have HP recovery with Draining Kiss as well, so Sylveon probably stays alive much longer than it, like, well, definitely much longer than Haxorus and Slacking. But yeah, Sylveon stays alive longer, so you get more hits in, so there's that. But you just don't do any burst damage at all. That's unfortunate with Sylveon. Moving on, last one we're going to have in this tier, we're going to throw in Chandelure. Chandelure's downsides. Let's start with downsides again. The self-burn's just a meme at this point. I mean, the speed is good, but the burn is just like, come on, right? Chandelure does okay damage. It just slowly burns itself out every time you attack, which is a huge downside. Moving on, D tier. Marshall. Not much to talk about Marshall. Damage is okay. Downsides are pretty obvious. I guess, yeah, there's not much to talk about Marshall. It's Marshall, right? Rampardos. Really, really good burst damage. Keyword burst damage, because you die after 2 hits. It's that's like the meme for Rampardos right now. They just die after 2 hits. I mean, what can you do? So there's that. Moving on, Kaili. It's just RNG. You kind of need to like get hit, and it's just hard, I guess. I mean, well, it's not hard if you like go into a stage. It's just like something you're weak against. But Beak Blast, it just takes too much. It takes too long to do too little. Well, actually, it doesn't do little, but yeah, it's just too hard to set up Kaili, unfortunately. Moving on, Bugsy. Really hard to set up too. Fell Stinger, you have to get like the killing blow on the opponent, which in co-ops, when you're especially when you're going with randoms or NPCs, well, less so with NPCs, more so with randos, you can't communicate with them, so a lot of people don't even know what you're doing, and people like getting the kill shot on the opponent. So Beedrill is, yeah, and also before you mega, it's just not, it doesn't have it, right? Seabold, it's a decent water type striker, which also has fighting type moves. So there's that, I guess. It's two bar moves. It doesn't do damage, does have type coverage, so there's that. Moving on, Solrock. If you want to put Solrock lower, that's fine. It's just that, I mean, it's the only physical psychic type striker. Its self buffs like aren't, it's not terrible. Its stats are terrible, but Zen Headbutt. There you go. Moving on, next here, Tyranitar. I guess like these last few tiers, they're kind of mushy. Like you could throw them all together, honestly. Yeah, whatever. Let's throw them together. Let's put Tyranitar up here as well. Why not? Tyranitar. Not much I could say. I love Tyranitar. Tyranitar is one of my favorite pseudo legendaries. They did Tyranitar dirty. Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to talk about it. Poor Tyranitar, man. Mudstill, we could put it in here, I guess. Mudstill, I mean, what can you do? Like, it literally ever was used once in the Solgaleo event, and it wasn't even that great. Like, no damage. It has, like, some bulk, I guess. So it doesn't die as easily. But it still dies pretty easily. So there's that. And Barry, we're just going to leave it at F. Barry literally does nothing. There's an AoE water type move that does approximately 0 damage if you round it up, usually. Okay, slight exaggeration. But yeah, Bubble Beam, Bubble. You got nothing with Barry, unfortunately. And I like Barry. I like Empoleon. Yeah. Please. Give Barry a good Synchrid. I want to use Barry. So there we go. Again, totally subjective. And one more shout out to my boy Spark on the Pokemon Masters Reddit and Reddit Discord for helping me. You know, I just wanted like a second opinion. I just don't want to just steamroll it with my you know, just everything is just my opinion, and you know, because when it's like completely completely subjective, it's to one person's opinion, where it's sometimes I just overlook things, right? And yeah, I'm glad I did consult a second opinion, and I think it's decent. I don't know. It you know, it depends on you guys if you guys think it's, you know, it's half decent or it's just like downright terrible, right? So, anyways, again, that's me for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, or not. Let me know. I don't really care. So, yeah, again, like and enjoy this video. Subscribe to the channel for some more Pokemon Masters content. I'll see you guys in the next one.